Welcome to the Warsquared Fantasy Football Podcast, a full-service year-round podcast with weekly episodes to provide fans with info on their teams and players. Whether you're a newbie or a longtime veteran of the fantasy wars, Warsquared is the podcast for you. And welcome into the post-NFL Draft of 2023 edition of the Warsquared Fantasy Football Podcast. We're just going to jump into news here. We'll start with some of the big topics. The Texans traded up, took their top two guys on their board at 2 and 3, taking C.J. Stroud first and then Will Anderson, getting what is being called the quarterbacks of both of their offense and defense. Now, Arizona, for giving up the 3, who I thought Tennessee was going to jump up.
I told you they weren't, and you didn't believe me, did you?
Although apparently they did try to jump up the rest of the evening, but Arizona gave up the 3 and the 105 for Houston's 12, 33, and the Texans first and thirds in 2024.
Which should be top 5 picks in each one of those rounds.
Theoretically.
When we get to grading the drafts, we're going to go back to that trade and talk about that one of the draft grades that I gave somebody.
Okay. I mean, potentially it's a great trade for both teams.
Yes, potentially. And when I start talking about the trade, the player involved in the trade that is Will Anderson. Incredible player. But as I'll explain later, the trade itself, I don't think was that great of a trade for one of the two teams.
Oh, it's not a good trade for Houston. It's
not
way
close.
Too much value
Mm-hmm.
But if they reverse it and they take Will Anderson at 2, and then they're telling the Cardinals they're trading up for a quarterback, it's going to cost them another first.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yes.
For sure. 100%.
What, 3 firsts is too much?
It cost San Francisco 3 1s to move from 12 to 3 to get Trey Lance 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Before the draft, we were talking about possible trades we expected to take place, and I said 3 firsts is not unheard of to move up in the draft. And somebody argued with me. Now you're going along with me?
Well, it's not too much if you get a generational player that changes your franchise.
Okay.
Do I ever want to give up that much? No.
No, I don't disagree.
It's
but
just
sometimes
too much.
Sometimes you got to get the guy you want if that's the guy you want.
Right.
And that's what they did with Will Anderson, which is perfectly okay. If they get their guy, they got their guy. And that's something that the GM, that he's going to have to live with for the next lifetime.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. That is a key to what is going on in the NFL right now.
Mm-hmm.
Getting their guy.
Yeah,
That's what these GMs are doing. They are making trades to get their guy. It doesn't matter whether it's a good value or not, as far as the point system that Jimmy Johnson created or anything else like that. It solely becomes, we're going to go get the guy we want.
And if you get your guy and he changes your DNA of your team and makes you great going forward, you're a GM there for a long time. If it doesn't work out correctly, you're on the job market in about 2 years.
So we'll move on to the biggest story that comes out of the draft, I think, is Will Levis falls out of the first and goes all the way to 33, where the Titans traded up to get him.
I'm happy that he fell to 33 and Tennessee was able to give up basically a third-round draft pick next year for him.
Some nachos and a beer.
Pretty much, yeah. When the trade came down on Saturday,
Friday,
I'm sorry, because I was driving to Garden City to my granddaughter's gymnastics competition, and I saw it trade come down. Going, they moved up 5 picks, moved down 10 picks, and gave up a third. Oh yeah, we'll do that anytime you can to get our perceived best quarterback on the board at that point in time. Now, there were 2 reasons why he fell, according to everything that I've been able to read. One is his left big toe that he injured during the season. Some teams were afraid of that going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Understandable. And the second reason was he seemed a little bit surly in some of his draft interviews.
Well, the biggest thing that I think they pointed out is once you got past
number 4,
past 13,
mm-hmm.
nobody else was going to take him.
No. Once you got past the teams that were in need of quarterback, he was going to drop. to drop like a lead balloon.
Right.
In retrospect, I just can't believe some team didn't come up and trade in to get him.
Well,
but that being said, they might not want to pay the price to come up and get him, knowing he was going to continue to fall.
That's the Titans tried to trade in from everywhere from 20 to 31, and nobody would take the deals.
Yep, because
most of them, like we were kind of talking about on our draft day show, was people wanted those picks. There were specific players that they targeted to take there, and they weren't going to trade out.
No.
Unless you blow them away. You're going to give me 2 1s.
And Tennessee wasn't going to do that because the draft capital is too precious to them at this point in time.
Right. You're going to give me 2 1s to do it. No, we're not.
But
we're not even going to give, we don't even want to give you a 1 next year.
But what was the big news around Will Levis on draft night?
The hot chicks?
That's what you guys were talking about.
I mean, you know, the dude won the green room as far as.
Well, the 2 blondes were his sisters.
Yeah. I mean, they probably have modeling deals now.
Oh, they should definitely.
I mean, if they don't have an agent working NIL for them, something's wrong. I don't even know if they play sports, but I don't care.
Yeah. And
Is his girlfriend still with him is the real question.
I'm sure his girlfriend is still with him. She actually tweeted in his defense and said, time to go to work, time to prove everybody wrong.
Did you see how capped and bleached her teeth were? This girl is professional. I mean, she is.
Whoa.
We're not going to go quite that far.
Hold on. Oh, boy.
She is doing modeling work somewhere already, I guarantee.
She is professional.
But it was watching him fall was painful because he was potentially the top pick in the draft according to some experts out there, and falling all the way to 33 made it where maybe he'll be a little hungrier. We'll see.
Well, there's definitely going to be a chip on his shoulder.
100%.
And somebody's article I read said he looks and feels just like Brett Favre, who fell to pick 33 as well.
Does he though?
Well,
Brett Favre was a lot skinnier than Will Levis.
Oh, he was not as thick of a bitch as what Will Levis is.
I feel like Favre was just always more of a gunslinger, though. I mean, Levis
has an arm strength that's comparable to Favre.
He looks like the prototypical quarterback.
He was the perfect quarterback for Tennessee's system.
I think it's a great pick by Tennessee.
I think it's a good fit. Yeah.
And we'll cover that more when we get to our draft grades.
Well, we'll move on to Detroit. They draft Jahmyr Gibbs at 12 and Jack Campbell at 18.
And if you listen to our draft night pick, you realize how much we panned those 2 picks, and we're going, what are they doing? They had the chance to get a generational talent at defensive tackle and absolutely solve their defensive problems at that point in time. And they drafted They traded down and drafted Jahmyr Gibbs instead.
Right.
Could have traded down 2 or 3 times.
Now,
and still got him.
That led to, on day 3, on Saturday, they traded DeAndre Swift to the Eagles.
Of all teams, the number 1 competition.
For a swap of 7th round picks and a 2025 fourth. 2025. 2 years from
ago.
now. The Eagles will have at least 5 compensatory picks in the next 2 drafts that are into 3rd rounds because of free agents that are going to leave.
And they'll be afforded to let them walk because they refilled those positions in the draft.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
The only good thing about the Cowboys draft is the Deuce Vaughn draft video. If you have not seen it, search for it and watch it. It is amazing. I almost started bawling like a baby about 30 seconds in.
Yep. Realizing that his dad is a chief scout for the Cowboys. And anytime it came to his son in the scouting department stuff, he had to walk out of the room and was not involved in any of the decision-making process to draft Deuce Vaughn or even scout Deuce Vaughn. Being able to call him and say, you want to go to work with me on Monday was pretty cool.
It was extremely cool.
And by the way, Deuce Vaughn's going to kill it in Dallas.
Yeah, if it was the old school Dallas line, you'd get to see what it was like if Barry Sanders were running behind that line. Of course,
I wouldn't go that far.
I'm telling you, he's going to explode out of there. He is not Barry Sanders talent. He's not going to juke anybody out of their ACL like he did to Rod Woodson. But behind a huge line, that's the problem. You can't see him shooting out of there because by the time you see him, he gone.
Yep, Darren Sproles-esque.
Very Darren Sproles-esque. We'll double down on that later. Jordan Love does not get the 5th year option picked up, but gets a contract that almost equals. Okay. I mean, I guess, will this become the norm now? Because
it could. In fact, I think it was a great move by the Packers. We're gonna play you this year. We're actually gonna give you 2 1-year prove it deals. This year on your 4th year.
The next year is not a prove it deal. It's like $13.5 million with incentives to take it to 20 and a half.
That's still a prove it deal for a quarterback.
Compared to $2.25 million that he's making this year, that's a hell of a pay increase.
Still a prove it deal for a quarterback. And if he works out this year and plays well, they'll play next year, then extend him another 5 years at that point in time, which I think he's going to absolutely kill it in Green Bay.
So this is the 2020 or the COVID draft of players who had their 5th year option picked up. Here are the no-brainers. Joe Burrow.
Yes.
Andrew Thomas, tackle for the Giants.
Yes.
Tua. Little bit of a it's a no-brainer in the situation of Miami's put all their eggs in this basket.
What Miami should have done was exactly what Green Bay did, and not pick him up, but give him a 5th year contract that's not picked up the option.
I'm still telling you, I think Tua's going to
on my concussion
be injured again this year and never play again, but he'll pick up the money and at least he'll have this paycheck to remember his time in the NFL.
I think that's just very distinct possibility.
Justin Herbert.
Yes.
Derek Brown for the Panthers. Defensive tackle at 11.7 million, where the defensive tackle market is currently at 18 million. That's a hell of a deal. Jedrick Wills, tackle for the offensive tackle for the Browns.
Yes.
Again at 14.2, still a hell of a deal for them.
And a very good left tackle.
Tristan Wirfs, the tackle for the Buccaneers.
That was questionable. A couple articles I read.
No,
he was great the first year. Second year he was above average. Third year wasn't so good. 4th year's coming up.
Yeah, he's a cornerstone that they're building around.
Yeah, they are. But if they get the Tristan Wirfs of year 1 and 2, it is. But if they get Tristan Wirfs of last year, they're throwing money in the wind again.
Yeah, but part of that is the rest of the line was terrible.
They've got no choice but to do that, though.
Jerry Jeudy.
No, let him walk.
No, it's 13 million. The market for wide receivers is 20.
You let him walk.
No, you do not, because he's finally going to be used like he should have been used. Remember, his quarterbacks have been the ghost of Russell Wilson with the ghost of Nathaniel Hackett trying to coach something in there. Drew Lock.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't even know who it was before Drew Lock. It was somebody else that was Teddy B.
Yep, Teddy Bridgewater. I would not have extended him to the 4th year, but I would have looked at doing an optional year. If you meet certain incentives, this one will kick in for another 1 year, see what happens.
Okay. A.J. Terrell for the Falcons, cornerback.
No brainer.
CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys.
I would have extended him early.
I think that's probably what's going to happen. They're going to end up doing a deal with him in July. That's a 6 or 7 year type thing.
Yep.
I mean, because I think he's 23.
The price is only going to grow.
That, and they can extend the salary cap. They can extend the signing bonus over an extra 2 years at that point in time.
Justin Jefferson.
Just give him the bank.
They're going to back up a truck for this guy.
The problem is who's going to throw him the damn ball?
That's what next year's draft picks are for. Or they're going to end up trading for a Tannehill.
Again, who's going to throw him the damn ball?
Right. And then the last one was Brandon Ayuk.
That's a crapshoot.
That's a questionable one. There.
I mean, to me, that and Tua are the ones that are just kind of hitting hope.
Ayuk has all the talent in the world,
but
he hasn't been able to put it together at all. And then last year, their offense was just...
Well, it was a mash unit.
If it wasn't for Christian McCaffrey, it would have been no offense.
It was a total mash unit. And again, it goes back to who's going to throw him the damn ball and how far down that route tree are you?
He's at least number 3 minum.
I mean, you've got Debo, you've got Kittle, you've got McCaffrey. Ayuk's at best number 4.
Yeah,
at best.
I had him ahead of McCaffrey's because I didn't put the running back in that route tree position like I should have.
I was down on Debo last year. I'm not higher on him this year.
No, what made Debo so great 2 years ago was the rushing touchdowns, which he didn't get last year. He's not going to get this next year because he doesn't want to be used that way.
Okay, so here are the notables that weren't picked up Chase Young,
Probably smart with the injury.
Got to play.
Isaiah Simmons,
That one was questionable. In fact, T. Higgins has already started the recruiting process to have him go to Cincinnati next year.
it's a dollars issue. 12.7
Mm-hmm.
is what it's going to cost him. It's too expensive. It's too much.
For the production he gave, yes.
CJ Henderson, another Panther. Again, he's a cornerback. He was drafted by the Panthers, now plays with the Jaguars.
And Simmons is in Arizona.
Yep. Mekhi Becton, tackle for the Jets.
No, Brainy, you don't pick that one up.
Nope. Javon Kinlaw, defensive tackle for the 49ers.
You know what he reminds me of? Something dropped from airplanes. A bomb. A bust.
Maybe. Lineman Austin Jackson for the Dolphins. Not worth $14.2 million. He's
Not
a
even
$4
close.
million guy. Kayvon Chason, linebacker for the Jags. Jalen Rager, the infamous player taken in front of Justin Jefferson by the Eagles, who now plays with the Vikings.
Who's now his teammate.
Kenneth Murray, I got to say, he plays for the Chargers. I don't even know who this dude is.
He's been injured.
As is the whole Chargers roster. So,
Yeah,
Right.
I mean,
pay the man. He fits right in.
exactly. he gets get out of hospital free cards,
Cesar Ruiz, a guard for the Saints. Now, he's a good player.
but not a.
Again, he's not a $14.2 million a year player.
Mhm.
He's a 6 or a 7. Jordan Brooks, linebacker for the Seahawks. The only reason he's not picked up is because he tore his ACL last year. Otherwise, they definitely would have picked this up.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Queen for the Ravens.
Has been a bust.
He's a good player. He's, again, not a $12.7 million
He's not-
player.
He's not the building. He's not the corner piece to a defense like they expected.
He's
him
not
to be.
Ray Lewis.
Correct.
They drafted Trent Shaver, a guy who is basically a clone of him, and he tweeted out "yeesh." Patrick Queen tweeted out "yeesh" during the
Uh-oh.
draft when they selected him,
There goes
Which
my
was-
job.
which was basically, "Oh, I'm about to get replaced."
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know who this next guy is. He's for the Dolphins. He's a cornerback. I don't know his first name, but his last name is Igbenegany. 11.5.
Not gonna work here any longer.
Right.
No.
And then the last one is the one off the Chiefs. CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Wow, I'm surprised, aren't you, Tobin?
Only 5.5 million. But
Not worth it.
The thing is, there's guys that will come off the street that are better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yeah, he's about number 4 in the depth chart, maybe number 5 at this point in time.
Jerick McKinnon is not making 5.5 million a year for the Chiefs, and he is way better.
He's not
than
even
Clyde
signed right now by the
Edwards-Helaire.
Chiefs either. But he's
He is
Actually, he signed today.
okay. I didn't see that one.
Yep.
Hope Ross likes that.
I didn't see what he signed for, but yeah, I mean, he's way more valuable.
It's nothing. I mean, it's less than 2 million for a year.
I mean, the talk I'm hearing out of Kansas City is, okay, do you extend CEH or do you go pick up Zeke Elliott?
Well, you let C
For a
you
roll.
You let
I'd go
CEH
pick
walk.
I'd go pick up Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
You let
Hey
CEH
Zeke, you
walk.
want to win a ring? Come in here for $6 million a year, $8 million a year.
Not even that much.
4
He'd do it-
million.
He'd do it for
Mhm.
2 to 4 million a year.
3 million, and you can have incentives that take it to 6 if we win the Super Bowl.
Right.
500,000 each playoff win.
Mm-hmm.
Right on. Let's roll.
You let CEH walk away and go whoever will be the fool that gives him money.
Speaking of some washed up running backs, Latavius Murray signed with Buffalo. I see that as pure insurance for Damian Harris, who I don't think has played a full season when he was with the Patriots.
Not yet. No.
The Jets signed a former Pro Bowl wide receiver. Randall Cobb, come on down.
In what
Surprise?
decade?
This last decade. Yeah. Are you surprised? Aaron Rodgers is there, so he gets his buddy to come with him, just like always. Aaron Rodgers is the LeBron James of the NFL.
And they signed a lineman that had been with him in Green Bay, Billy Turner.
Billy.
They do ayahuasca together.
about 3 years past his expiration date.
This is smelling like Tom Brady 2.0,
No,
Cat
this is
Purgatory.
It's pretty close.
This is smelling like LeBron James all over again.
Yeah, Purgatory coming.
Yes.
And then there's a bunch of smoke around this Eagles Cardinals thing that happened. So they released it like 5 minutes before the draft because they knew it would get buried by the draft. But between the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl, Monty Austinfort, the GM of the Cardinals, reached out to Jonathan Gannon, then the defensive coordinator of the Eagles, about possibly taking the Cardinals head coaching job.
Okay, sounds reasonable.
Well, they're not permitted to do that at that point. It's a tampering issue. So somehow the league basically said, you guys work some of this out yourselves. We're not going to decree anything here. And so the Eagles basically got I think it was a 4th rounder from the Cardinals, and then they swapped 7ths. So when I hear tampering, then I think back to why the Dolphins didn't have a pick in this draft.
But
And
that's a lot different.
Player versus coach.
Yeah.
They tried to get Sean Payton, who was under contract with the Saints, and they tried to get Tom Brady.
But it was the Tom Brady one.
It was the
probably
Tom
cost
Brady
them.
one that is the that's what blew it up.
Probably a 4th in the first place, then Tom Brady kicked it up to a 1st.
I don't think it was because of that. I think it was really because of the tanking that the Dolphins were trying to engage in to get Joe Burrow.
They were clear to that.
Yeah, they were.
Allegedly.
Sure they were. So the problem really becomes here, the NFL doesn't want anyone to talk about this. That's why they put it out right before the draft.
Smart man.
Because they don't want to have to say, we're going to not allow NFL teams to hire and fire coaches between the end of the regular season and the end of the Super Bowl.
Which is what they should do. They should freeze any transactions, coaches, everything, other than firing coaches from the end of the season to at the day after the Super Bowl.
Wait, are you talking about trade deadline and talking like that? Huh.
Well, we imposed one finally, didn't we?
Huh.
Well,
going back to the incident that happened in our sleeper league this past year with Tommy.
It's the whole thing with it's going to happen. They're going to talk unless you tell them they can't do it. And even then, they're still going to talk.
Their agents are going to talk.
Yeah.
I mean,
either open it up where anything can take place or ban it for that month and a half period after the end of the season to the Super Bowl. One of the two has to take place. Me, I'd open it up and let it go because who cares? But NFL, in their infinite wisdom with the Rooney Rule, is going to block that. That way, it allows minority coaches that are on teams still playing the chance to interview for jobs without being hindered by having to worry about the continuation of play.
But how many of those guys are getting jobs?
You know, not many this last year. What, one? Going back to that, though, the NFL is not going to pass over a coach based upon the color of their skin. You think so?
Yes.
You're the GM of a team. You finally got your dream job, and you're going to not hire somebody because of the color of their skin? I guarantee you that won't happen.
GM making the final decision on that. The guy that makes the billions upstairs is making the final decision on the head
millionaire.
coach.
It's the billionaire making that.
Right. I'm recommending what they do. There are going to be guys up there who say, nope, we're not going to hire that guy. They don't have to have any other reason.
What I want to know is I want to get into the Rooney Rule. Does that actually say that they have to hire? I mean, it's typically
they have to interview.
It's typically portrayed as they have to interview a coach of color.
Yes.
Which, let's be honest, that means a black African-American individual. Being the Native American in the room, I'm available for interviews, guys. Can we get some of that here too? I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Well, you can become the token interview that goes everywhere and interviews for that week period.
Just call me Eric Bieniemy.
Just get on a plane.
Yeah, I mean, I can take some nice trips.
Yeah.
Call it good.
I mean,
Tobin will go.
I'll interview in Miami. I'll interview in San Diego. Give me the beach places. I'm not going cold. I can tell you that. No, No Buffalo.
Oh, I'd take a trip to Minneapolis in the spring.
Oh, in the spring maybe,
In
but
spring
that's
or
not when these
December,
happen.
January.
That's not when these happen.
Yeah, it's either
Spring in Minneapolis is like June, Tommy.
Well,
actually it kind of is.
to really get to spring that I'm used to, right?
Yeah, this is mid-January. This is mid-June outside right now for Minneapolis. for us.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I agree. They've got to figure something out. This was kind of the
But
this was the Hunter Biden of the NFL news cycle around the draft. It's like,
No
let's
kidding.
let it out on a Friday afternoon at 3 when nothing else is going to happen and nobody will talk about that. I'll pay attention to this. That's what happened. I mean, they've the playbook's out there in the media.
Right.
Yeah, it's we beat ad nauseum about 2 years ago, maybe it was a year ago, about the hiring preferences and that type of stuff in the NFL. I find it very, very hard to believe that when they spend $6 billion for a franchise, they're not going to hire the best person to be a GM, be a president, and be a coach of that team based upon simply the color of their skin. I'm sorry, you're African American or you're an American of African descent. We can't hire you because, quite frankly, we don't hire people of that skin color.
Well, obviously, they're never going to say that, but that is 100% going to be a reason why they don't hire somebody. There was
find it
no
hard to
reason to fire Jim Caldwell in Detroit after he went to the playoffs 3 years and won 10 plus games.
I don't disagree, but apparently him and the GM had a conflict, and that's why he was released from the contract.
I've had a conflict with lots of coworkers in the past. It didn't mean that I didn't work with them.
I don't disagree, but in this case, the GM decided to go that way. I don't understand why him. I don't understand why Flores down in Miami got fired 2 years ago.
Well, we know why Flores got fired. He got fired because he wouldn't tank for Joe Burrow.
Allegedly,
Okay.
because they were clear to that. But yeah, let's move on before we beat this ad nauseum anymore, because there's more important things to talk about as far as draft night, that type of stuff goes.
So we'll try and go quicker tonight. Let's rate the best and worst drafts. As far as bestest, I've got the Eagles having the best draft.
I can't disagree. I mean, oh my gosh, they solved every problem they had in the draft and then picked up DeAndre Swift.
DeAndre Swift. Yes. Jalen Carter,
Cousin?
Nolan Smith,
Twin brother.
Keely Ringo, DeAndre Swift. It is Athens North. I mean, all Georgia guys. And they added a hard-hitting safety in Sidney Brown from Illinois and a swing tackle OT. This is just crazy. I mean, the last two drafts, the Eagles have killed it.
There are two GMs that I look at in the NFL as things you should pattern yourself as a GM off of. The Eagles GM, the Chiefs GM. Because they have both done phenomenal jobs of putting their franchises with a window that is so wide open you can drive a truck through it for the next 5 to 10 years.
I agree. Number 2, I'm going Lions. Now, hear me out. I don't like where they took their players. I don't like 12 and 18 for Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell. But the players are good. And they do fit needs. I mean, you don't take Jahmyr Gibbs unless you are going to trade DeAndre Swift.
Yeah. See, in one of the articles I read said Jahmyr Gibbs got drafted early because the Patriots were supposedly trying to move up to get him in front of them. The Patriots wanted him to be their Alvin Kamara swing, whatever it was, out of the backfield, and put him and the current running back in the
Ramondre
backfield
Stevenson
at the same time, and put Gibbs out on the wing, most often creating a horrible matchup for the linebackers.
Now, one of the things, DeAndre Swift has to be in a timeshare. I had an argument with Billy yesterday.
Wow, shocker.
Yep. Talking about DeAndre Swift.
Don't you own him?
I do. I own DeAndre Swift in the Dynasty League. Billy bet me $20 DeAndre Swift wouldn't have 18 carries in one game in the season.
I think
Next
I
year.
might agree with Billy on that one.
So Miles Sanders had 4 last year and had 3 with 17.
What's the over-under on that? You got the over 18, right?
Yeah, one game. He has to have one game with 18 carries.
What are the odds?
There's no odds. It's straight up.
Are you giving like
It'll happen because somebody's going to be dinged and he's going to be the bell cow for one game.
There'll be
But-
one game he goes off.
everybody healthy? I might agree with Billy.
Balance
As
load.
much as that scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. Wow. We didn't have him checked after the show.
Doc or Billy?
Yes.
Both.
So
Maybe we can get a 2-for-1.
Now, Campbell, he's a tackling machine, which they need behind their defensive line.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know who Sam Laporta was until the draft, but watching all the cut-ups and everything that they had on him, he looks just like George Kittle, which is shocking because they both went to Iowa.
I was going to say, it's tight end you.
Mm-hmm. It is really tight end you.
I mean, this guy moved really well and caught the ball all the time.
The reason why
a monster pick. Oh, go ahead.
The reason why I like the Lions draft, and I did agree with you the second, Hendon Hooker in the 3rd round.
That's the next one. Hendon Hooker. Okay.
He was the quarterback. If we go back 6 months before he tore the ACL, he was projected to be the first pick in the draft.
27-2, touchdown to interception before he tore his ACL.
And now he's a 3rd round pick on a team that doesn't necessarily need a quarterback, but needs a quarterback.
Well, if Jeff Goff goes back to Jeffdom and
goes back to Jared,
goes back to the horrible Rams Jeff Goff
from 2 years ago.
Yeah. If he goes back at all, they've got the next guy. And
they got him cheap.
Hendon Hooker is under a cheap contract for the next 3 years.
And let's say that Jeff Goff stays Jeff Goff and stays a franchise quarterback. Hendon Hooker in 2 years, trading for a first, trading for a second, trading for whatever you need at that point in time if he develops like we expect him to. He was actually the quarterback that I was looking more Tennessee to go after than Will Levis, because he meant more the Steve McNair mold, which is what Tennessee wants to go back to, than what Levis did.
Right.
I was happy with either one of them. Don't get me wrong, but I would have been just as happy if they would have stayed in the second round and got Hooker instead.
Number 3, I put the Steelers. They trade up to jump the Jets and get offensive tackle Broderick Jones, where they've done the research. It was a 3rd round pick that the Steelers needed to give up to get over the Patriots to the Patriots spot. The Patriots took a 4th. In another Bill Belichick screws the Jets move, they let the Steelers go up and get the tackle so that the Jets couldn't get him.
Not a bad idea.
Then they stayed put at number 1 on day 2 and basically traded Chase Claypool for Joey Porter Jr.
What a great trade.
I knew Doc was going to love it.
Oh, God. When I saw that they had the first pick of the draft and Joey Porter Jr., I just broke Joey Porter Jr., called it good. Joey, go sign your contract. You know it's going to be you're going to get the second round money.
I'm still shocked that they stayed pat and didn't take any of the offers, because they were getting some big offers there. I think it was just solely because they knew if they moved, somebody else would jump it back in front and they wouldn't be able to get Joey Porter Jr.
I didn't have my number 3 team was the Texans. So you have number 4. I don't have the Steelers in the top because they got 2 great players out of it. Not a lot of anything else other than maybe fillers for special teams and players that might develop in 2 or 3 years.
Well, the defensive tackle they got, I don't remember his name, but he was basically a guy that's going to replace Cam Hayward. And they drafted Georgia tight end Darnell Washington.
All block, no tackle, no catch.
Right, but he's not used that way.
No, he's going to be used as a blocking tight end,
But he could become an offensive tackle. I mean, one of the things they're talking about is put 30 pounds on this guy, and he's a monster. He's a mauler.
But I didn't like the pick just because of the depth issues that went there, but I love the first 2 picks they had. I love the first 2 picks they had. But anything after that, I didn't like at all. They could develop into this. And we talked about this draft in 5 years. Steelers could very easily be number 1 at that point in time based upon how those guys develop.
Yeah, the one that I've got in the mix that I don't see either one of you have in your top 5 is Seattle.
I've got Seattle at number 4.
Yeah, I have them in my top 3. Basically, I mean, anytime you can take the Russell Wilson deal, parlay it into 4 of the top 57 picks, and fit needs. I mean, with Witherspoon,
the legend of Boom is back.
I mean, that's a knockout specialist.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Witherspoon, you've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. If he can stay healthy,
who was the safety, the hard-hitting safety for the Hawks?
Cam,
not Earl Thomas. Yes, Cam Chancellor.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically a lighter.
You don't want to go in front of this guy.
No, they have the Legion of Boom back there.
Yeah,
and they are probably the best team in the NFC West at this point in time.
And you add Derek Hall, outside linebacker, gives them that edge rusher. They can get to the quarterback again.
And they added a backup,
and then you add Charbonnet.
Yeah, the backup running back who.
I don't know if you guys saw him play for UCLA. I saw 3 or 4 of their late night games.
Phenomenal.
Holy crap. That's a fantastic pickup.
Walker gets injured, then he's going to step in and fill the role.
A 1 and 1A.
Right.
Yeah, Walker might end up someplace else in 2 years if he can't stay healthy.
Yeah.
But remember, a couple of years ago, this was the Seattle mode. After beast mode, it was two guys that are basically the same guy,
Mm-hmm.
and they just alternate.
Yeah.
And-
I had Seattle at 4 because I thought they did a phenomenal job. The only thing I would have liked to have seen them done was draft Hendon Hooker in the 2nd or 3rd round.
Yep.
If they would have put Hendon Hooker as just a backup to him at this point in time, let him heal for 2 years, then put him in, I would have had them number 1.
Yeah. I think the problem is, they didn't have a 3rd round pick.
Yep. Hendon Hooker's that good of a talent for him. Fits their system perfectly. You go get him and plug him in behind there.
I'm just not a fan of Jackson Smith and Jigba.
He was the best wide receiver on the board, and they got him.
It's going to all come down to if he can stay healthy. And that's the true of any of these guys, though.
Well, 2 years ago at this point in time, he was the best player at wide receiver for Ohio State, and that includes 2 first-round draft picks, the
And
rookie
next
of the
year's
year.
first round draft pick.
Yeah, and next year's first-round draft pick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, next year's top 3 pick is
They'll be
head and
they'll be
shoulders above this
quarterback
guy.
Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yep.
And Jigba is, talented. If he stays healthy,
He could be the Enigma. He could be in Jigba. I don't know.
and with Lockett and Metcalf there, what a great number 3 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Again, this is another thing Billy and I talked about yesterday. And I said, I can see a scenario where they've already got plays designed where everybody except in Jigba is running a fly
Mm-hmm.
and they're just cutting him behind and letting him get a first down because Fant's going to take people down the slot. Metcalf and Lockett are both going to take people deep.
Yep.
Well,
And
they'll
who
run
are
that
you gonna
3
guard?
wide with him on the inside and have him go diagonal across.
Oh yeah, he
The
can cut
the
either way.
Tyreek Hill pattern,
Yeah, he can read the cut,
and he's running
either
off
gonna
the safety.
He's either going to cut to the sideline or he's going to cut to the middle.
Seattle and San Francisco are 1A, 1B in the AFC. Excuse me, the NFC West at this point in time.
Well,
Depending on what
primarily because who knows what
who those
San
quarterbacks
Francisco's
gonna
doing
be.
at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So number 4, I had the Texans, who Doc had 3. It was a statement draft. They come back up to get the highest player on their board after going against the conventional thinking, taking C.J. Stroud. They got Will Anderson Jr. Then they drafted Anderson's teammate, Henry To'oTo'o, another inside
Who's a
linebacker,
tackling machine.
on day 3, along with a new target, Tank Dell, who CJ Stroud threw to in the combine, and they started texting each other after that. And then Tank Dell, after CJ Stroud is drafted, he texts Stroud and says, "Hey, put in a good word for me." He goes, "Oh, I got you." So
He's there.
they got him. Of course, he was probably already on Houston's board anyways, since he was a University of Houston player.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly another nice thing to say, okay, well, our quarterback already likes him, so that's good.
Whole new day in Houston coming up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see it.
I think in 2 years, Houston will be a 500 team. And if everything breaks correctly for them, they could be the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2 years.
That could be right. And with my last one in the top 5, I took the Titans.
I had them as number 6.
Skoronski fits an elite need, and they would have taken Levis there if he wouldn't have been there. He was the only guy they would have taken there over Will Levis. So they traded up, got him at 33, and that's only because no one was trading out of the first, and the Steelers certainly weren't trading 32. 2 huge holes filled with those, and a new day for the Titans franchise. I don't know much about the rest of the guys they picked. I didn't really research that, but those 2 picks were key for the Tennessee Titans.
Well, as one of the most, I read 3 or 4 different articles. I read 4 different articles on Tennessee, and all 4 of them said Tennessee did not rebuild. They realigned what they were looking for to be competitive this year and next year.
All offensive picks, by the way.
Finally,
Nobody on defense.
we got the anchor at left tackle or left guard, depending upon what Dillard does. If Dillard comes in and plays left tackle for us and is above average, we'll have one of the best left sides of the offensive line in the NFL next year going forward. If he doesn't, Skoronski kicks in, Dillard kicks out, Dillard kicks in. We still have one of the best ones. the most intriguing prospect we drafted was the 7th round pick that we had, which is a kid out of Vanderbilt who is a burner, runs good routes, has questionable work ethic and some hand issues is what they say, drops too many easy balls, but it'll be interesting. I had Tennessee 6. I had Arizona Cardinals number 5.
Jamar Chase dropped a bunch of balls in Cincinnati his rookie season.
Before the games, before the season started, yeah.
Preseason. Yeah.
Preseason. Yep. Remember him inability to catch the ball? Is he going to be a bust? Articles.
Oh, yeah.
But I had the Cardinals number 5. Cardinals moved up and down the board, got the player they wanted, and most importantly, they got draft capital next year that belonged to the Texans.
Tons of capital next
That way, when they have 2 top 5 picks next year, they can fill those 2 needs to make Kyler Murray hopefully more successful as a quarterback than what he was.
If they finish in the top 5, Arizona and Houston, like they are bottom 5, like they're projected to do, the Cardinals will have 5 of the first 75 picks.
Not a bad draft haul, and they got the left tackle they wanted. They picked up a wide receiver in the 2nd round they liked and think they'll be able to develop him as it goes along. They did everything right this draft to be able to set everything up going forward next year when Murray comes back healthy.
Anybody else? Any other teams that you want to mention towards the top?
No, I think that's pretty good.
Okay, I have one team that I liked the draft, but I was disappointed in their activity at the draft, and that's the Chiefs.
Yeah, nobody wanted to deal with the champs.
Yeah, I mean,
it wasn't for lack of asking.
Remember, they had 11 picks, and they only ended up with, I think, 6 selections.
7 selections.
Okay.
But I was disappointed. I expected them to go up in the 1st round and get a big wide receiver for them. Zay Jones, somebody along those lines, and they didn't.
Zay Flowers.
Zay Flowers,
Zay Jones plays for the Jaguars.
But they still had a good draft, but it wasn't the draft that I was expecting to do to be able to move up and down and kind of control the draft, kind of like what the Cardinals did at this point in time.
This was a Brett Veach draft. This is take your scouts, do your homework, find the guys that fit your system, fit the holes you need.
I don't know which of their 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounders, but one of those players is going to turn out to be a stud.
It's going to be Wanya Morris, tackle from OU.
Mm-hmm.
It was the underrated one over there, other than Anton.
He'll be the starting right tackle.
He will likely win the right tackle job. You watch.
So 3/5 of the Kansas City offensive line will be Sooners.
Yes.
They trade Crimson and Cream
sooner than later.
Yep. Okay. Who had the worst draft, Tom?
Oh, I'm taking the Packers.
I got the Rams there.
Lucas Van Ness.
Got the guy they wanted.
Jaden Reed.
Got the guy they wanted.
Sean Clifford. I mean, I get a tight end in Luke Musgrave. I mean, it should have been Kincaid instead of Van Ness, in my opinion. But why another tight end in Tucker Kraft?
Got to have more tight ends up because it's cold.
They have good to great wide receivers that they got last year. Why another this year?
Because they needed to.
What? Why? Where?
They lost Lazard. They lost Cobb.
Oh, they didn't lose
Okay,
anything.
they lost
in
Lazard.
Cobb. They lost Lazard. But so they're bringing another guy in after they already had Dobbs and Watson. Watson's going to be the one. Dobbs will be the 2.
Dobbs was unhealthy after last year.
I mean, why not put Dalton Kincaid in at tight end there? That's a much better fit than putting a guy in Lucas Van Ness who never started at Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
They got the guy they wanted.
And they didn't draft an offensive lineman with the mass unit of Bakhtiari and Jenkins. They're playing left tackle and left guard.
I don't disagree. I would have loved to have had them. I would have loved to have seen them add a starting left tackle. Broderick Jones, go up, get him. He went 1 pick before them. Get Broderick Jones, solve that issue for you. The problem they have is they are stuck with Bakhtiari for 2 more years. Period.
Money.
They can't cut him for 2 more years. He's $27 million against the cap each year, no matter what they do. So you go with him and hope he's healthy. If he's not healthy, you replace him next year. We can afford to cut him the year after that. I looked at their salary cap. They are in salary cap purgatory this year. Next year it gets better. 2 years from now, they have like $145 million in salary cap space projected.
Yeah. I just think there was a lot better players that they could have selected. Well, I'm just not impressed with any of these guys. I could be wrong.
I don't disagree with you. I didn't like the Packers draft, but I didn't have one of my worst drafts.
Who did you have as worst?
My worst draft was the Rams.
Okay.
For obvious reasons. When you're drafting in the 3rd round.
As your start,
you're going to have a crappy draft no matter what you do. You're not going to be able to fill a whole lot of needs.
I can't argue with that. I put the Niners there for the exact same reason.
I had the Niners number 2 for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
The Rams didn't do a lot to fill any of the problems they had, and they're still questionable at quarterback because is Stafford going to play or is he not going to play?
Well, according to everything, he's going to play, but they don't have a backup quarterback. That's why they drafted Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
Which is a great fit when you
like
think about it.
I
All the
like
dude does is win games.
I like Stetson Bennett. I actually expected, not Tennessee, I expected Dallas to pick him up as a backup because he'd fit that system really, really well.
Oh, the system's changing now.
Yep. You're number 2?
The Commodes. I mean, Forbes, okay, I get it. He's a ball hawk, but I would have much rather had Joey Porter Jr.
They had Forbes rated higher. They get paid more than you do.
That is true.
And they get paid a lot more than I do.
That is true.
Tobin, on the other hand, he's open for anything, so he might get paid better.
I did like getting Stromberg and Daniels. We had to get a guy that could play center. We were down to street free agents at center last year. I've heard both of those guys called reaches, but I thought they were good picks for us. Linebacker was a need that went unaddressed.
They have so many needs. How can you fill them?
Well, they don't have so many needs. They have very key needs. We have needs on the offensive line. We have needs at linebacker. We have need at corner because we can't stop the wide receivers that are in our division on a consistent basis.
You can't stop. You need a quarterback.
And we need the most important position on the field in a quarterback.
They didn't address it.
This is not the draft we were going to get that player, though.
No,
you're hoping you're in the hunt for next year.
Although I would have loved to have taken Dorian Thompson out of UCLA.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think this was one where the Commodes are looking at. We have a new owner coming in. We're doing this to get us through till the new owner gets here. Next year's going to be the statement draft that we do for the new owner. So let's make sure we get some filler at positions so we're not as bad as what we're going to be, but we don't be that good because we want to be able to get that.
We're going to be the same spot. We're going to be in the teens.
Filler to me was the Rams. The Rams got 14 dudes. They needed bodies.
But they needed bodies.
They checked that box.
And that's why I didn't downgrade the Rams draft because they just had to get dudes.
Yeah. It's kind of like in Major League. Who the hell are these guys?
Yeah,
right.
But they got 14 dudes.
I looked at the Rams draft and I'm going, how many of these dudes going to be here in 4 years?
2 maybe.
Oh.
Maybe 2 if they're lucky.
4 or 5. I mean, they'll be
volume, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, right now a bunch of the non-star players are 5th, 6th, and 7th rounders from the Rams. Guys that they developed and trained.
Yep.
Yeah. Conversely, for me, another one that was at the bottom for me. Obviously, they forfeited their first round pick in the Dolphins. But when your first pick is 51, Cam Smith, cornerback, South Carolina. Okay.
Yeah, terrible.
384, Devin Akane from Texas A&M, running back. Wide receiver in the 6th round at 197, Elijah Higgins, Stanford. And their last pick, yes, you heard me right, folks, only 4 picks. 7th, 238, Ryan Hayes, offensive tackle, Michigan. I don't even think that dude started at Michigan.
I probably didn't. I didn't have I had them at number 6 or 7.
I'm like 4 dudes, and they've got a lot of holes to fill.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't get. Well, I mean, obviously they've mortgaged everything on the Tyreek Hill results and all this.
You forfeit a pick, you give the Tyreek picks.
This is their Super Bowl window is this year, not next
With
year.
What?
But this year. I'm just saying that's what they're looking at. This is the Super Bowl window.
It's a Super Bowl or bust for Miami.
That window has bars on it currently.
That window has the Chiefs, Bengals, Ravens, Chargers,
Bills. I mean, their only chance to make a Super Bowl is if they can somehow swindle their way into the NFC.
Yeah, Jaguars or Tennessee ahead of them.
They have to get on the right side of the bracket.
I don't think there is a right side.
There is a right side in the AFC.
It's Murderer's Row.
They've got to get on the bracket where the Chiefs and or the Bengals get eliminated.
That's not going to happen unless the AFC Championship game. That's one place one of them gets eliminated.
Something could happen where the Chiefs lose in the divisional round to Buffalo. It's a possibility.
Tommy's always wrong.
I'm just saying the only way, if they can get Buffalo in an AFC Championship game, they have a chance.
Miami.
Either way,
I think good luck winning the AFC East.
Oh, they can't. I don't know that they can win the AFC.
There's at least 3 teams better than them in the AFC East.
No, there's not. They are way better than the Patriots.
Maybe on the field, but not on the sideline.
And they are probably better than the Jets.
No, not a healthy Jets when they get Brees Hall back. That offense in New York is going to be.
I don't think Miami's a playoff team.
I don't think Miami's going to finish higher than 4th in the AFC East
With a healthy Tua. That's a big if.
Let me flip a coin and see how many times it comes up tails
With
in
a
a row.
full head of hair.
Right. I mean, it's a possibility.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, snowball's chance in hell.
I'm not saying it's a good chance.
Snowball's chance in Miami.
Yeah, getting a fastball Barry Bonds in his prime.
Uh-huh.
So we'll move on to my number 3, which is I have the Jaguars. I mean, Anton Harrison, I guess, but I would have taken what I think is a similar player later. I know he was a late riser. I think that was because everybody knew those top 4 linemen, who they were, and they were going early.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had to look at the second tier.
They also sitting there looking at, okay, look at the success that OU O-line has put into the league in the last few years.
I don't know
and the
how
pedigree
it is.
that's there.
We
need to go tap into this.
They get giant athletic guys on that offensive line.
It's going to be interesting to see if that continues with Venables there.
I think it's going to be, from looking at the recruiting class they had this last year and what is pre-signed for them next year. It's not going to get better. It's going to get much better.
Now, I don't know why they went tight end next and then hammer running back and tank Grigsby, because they've got Etienne.
Etienne's not a hammer.
I know, but why are you getting a hammer running back in the 3rd round or 4th round whenever they got Grigsby? There had to have been other players that are a bigger impact than that.
But look at their team. They needed a thumper at goal line.
Yeah, they need that 3rd and 1
They need the guy who can move the pile. They needed Jalen Hurts to get behind you and push you for a yard.
without putting Trevor Lawrence at risk, who's already proven he could be hurt.
With that Spicoli neck of his.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I didn't
because the ATN is not going to move that pile at 3rd and 1.
I had the Jaguars more like a 10 or 11 as far as draft as bad drafts go. They didn't have a bad draft. They didn't have a great draft, but they had a draft to fill the needs they have to sustain their growth as a team from what they did this last year.
Well, and they got numbers. That's what I see when I look at their draft board. They got numbers, and I think they probably help their special teams as much as anything.
Well, that's the next 3 picks after that were at linebacker and edge rusher, and that tells you they're looking for something they haven't been able to fill.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, their first pick last year, had they taken Aiden Hutchinson like they should have, they would have had the edge rusher side.
Well, Walker
filled.
did a good job last year as an edge rusher. He just wasn't Aiden Hutchinson.
But not many people are.
Yeah. My third worst draft was the Saints.
Yeah.
They got Brian Brees, who, great story, good player. I don't know what impact he's going to have as a defensive tackle there. He's not going to be a Aaron Donald. He's going to be a B+B type defensive tackle, which is good. And the story is phenomenal. But.
So this is the 24th consecutive year that the Saints have traded up to select a player in the draft without trading back once.
Yep. Great story. Their 2nd round draft pick, the edge out of Notre Dame, was an atrocious pick. There were probably 5 to 6 better edges on the board at that point in time than him.
So here's another thing that I just want to bring up about the Saints historically is I believe they had 4 defensive linemen sign as free agents elsewhere this year.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not going to downgrade a Saints draft until they pan out or don't pan out. I mean, Trey Hendrickson is killing it for the Bengals, and he was a Saints draft pick that a bunch of people went, I'm not sure if he can play.
Yeah. Turns out he could someplace else.
Turns out he played in New Orleans, and he was so good, they were like, oh, God, we'd love to keep him, but
we can't afford him.
We can't afford him because we're already $38 million over the cap for next year with 38 players.
But they didn't get one impact player out of this draft. They got a lot of filler, but not a lot of standout stuff. And because of that, I downgraded him to the 3rd worst draft.
And all I'm saying is we don't know.
Yep. We'll wait and see. Your fourth pick was
Cowboys.
my fourth pick. I had the Cowboys as my number 4 worst team too. Who the hell did they draft in the first round?
Motsy Smith. Now, okay, they're excited about it because he's a space-eating run stuffer. I believe he had 48 tackles last year, 24 for loss.
Did he play NAIA basketball football?
No, he played at Michigan. I guess. But again, Luke Schoonmaker is the Dalton Schultz replacement. They've already got 3 other dudes just like him. In Hutchinson, and I don't remember the other 2 guys' names.
Why didn't they go with the best wide receiver on the board? Because there were lots of wide receivers left at that point in time to fill that need.
And
I
they
looked
don't
at
take
their needs.
Jalen Hyatt?
I'm looking going, they can get that other running mate for CeeDee Lamb. And they didn't.
I mean, the Eagles stole the draft again.
Oh, easily.
And the Bills trade up in front of them to get Kincaid, who I could have sworn the Cowboys were going to get. And then they passed on Mayer, who his comp is Jason Witten.
Yeah, but it's the Cowboys, and they're smarter than everybody else out there, which I don't understand it, but you know.
Now, in their defense, I'm hearing a lot of talk out of Kansas City that Kansas City tried to go up and get that pick from the Cowboys and had designs on taking Motsy Smith to add right next to Chris Jones as a space-eating run stuffer.
Well, yeah, I mean, he does the run stuffing, and Chris Jones gets the quarterback.
I mean, you think about it, they've got arguably probably the best dudes in the game on the defensive side of the ball. So now maybe you can get some guys off of him. Keep moving Micah around.
Micah Parsons loves
moving Parsons around. Let him meet up some guys and let Parsons do his thing.
But they didn't do anything to help the offense at all, and that was a real issue last year. And they didn't really need if they're going to address defense, got to address the backfield, because that defensive backfield was more porous than a
but
broken
they
down
traded
dam.
for Stephon Gilmore,
who's not going to be Stephon Gilmore 3 years ago.
Well, of course he's not going to be from 3 years ago, but he's still going to be better than what they had.
Anything's better than what they had with Diggs back there.
Well, they'll still have Diggs too, so he's not going anywhere.
That's the player that should have replaced.
And then at number 5, I had the Chargers. I like Quentin Johnson, and I think he's the replacement for Keenan Allen. And Tuipulotu, Loto, a great selection at defensive tackle. But you've got Austin Eckler wanting out, and you don't take Deuce Vaughn after the success they already had with Darren Sproles, and you need a running back to fit into their system. He's basically the same size as Austin Eckler. And you've got Justin Herbert. So why are you drafting Max Duggan?
They need a backup.
I mean, it's 7th round. I mean, they clearly, one of their scouts, their GM, went to TCU. They got QB1, wide receiver 1, and wide receiver 2 from TCU in this one draft.
Yeah.
Quentin Johnson, Darius Davis.
The other
Max
thing,
Duggan.
well, just when you said TCU, it popped into mind. The other reason I don't downgrade the Saints draft is they drafted Kendre Miller out of TCU in the 3rd round. Coincidentally, the same round they drafted Alvin Kamara in. And that guy was one of the guys that I had my eye on to see where he went.
I mean, he can't go to Vegas?
I think that is a huge draft pick for the Saints.
You're going to put a clause in the contract he can't go to Vegas?
What does that mean?
If he's the clone to Kamara.
No, he's not a clone of Kamara, but I mean,
got to get the Pro Bowl out of Vegas is what I'm hearing.
Well, my number 5 team was the Panthers. Panthers really got 2 players out of this draft, and that was it. Not going to get that in next year's draft either.
Yeah, they're going to be hurt for next year. But if Bryce Young pans out, it's a win draft.
Yeah, but right now it's a lost draft because they didn't get anything to help him with other than one player. Yeah. They traded away their number 1 wide receiver.
They got Jonathan Mingo, and I think that is a monster pickup.
Name me a great OU wide receiver.
Well, he didn't go to OU. He went to Ole Miss.
You're right.
I can name 2. One is A.J. Brown, who's one of your favorites, and the other is DK Metcalf, who is a super freak. And then you can go to Dawson Knox, who's a great tight end. Then you can go to Elijah Moore, who also got traded to the Packers, which jumps back to my previous point of why are they drafting more wide receivers?
My 5th was the Atlanta Falcons. After the Bijan Robinson pick, I'm not impressed with the rest of their take at all. Matt Bergeron in the 2nd round, guard out of Syracuse. Meh, that's a reach right there, I think, for a guard in the 2nd round. I mean, not a blow your socks off guard.
He was a right tackle at Syracuse, which translates to guard in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But he'll have that swing tackle flexibility.
I mean,
but the Atlanta Falcons are the best team in the NFC South.
yeah, but they didn't, other than Bijan Robinson, they've got 6 dudes that
there's
most
nothing-
people are, that's just space filler.
It's filler at
There's
that point
nothing
in time.
on there that you're blown away by.
And then there's the Jake Moody second pick the Niners make as a kicker in round 3. I mean,
When
they just
arguably the better kicker was drafted in the next round by the Patriots.
right, but they just went out and cut a trade for Zane Gonzalez, and you're going to spend that high of a pick. You could have probably waited a round or 2 and still got Jake Moody.
Okay, top 5 fantasy players out of the draft, Tom.
Number one's Bijan Robinson.
No
Hands
doubt.
down. It's not even close. I'm projecting him for probably 1,200 combined yards and 10 touchdowns.
I can't argue.
My number 2 is Anthony Richardson.
Why?
He has the highest floor of, I believe, any of the quarterbacks. I believe that he has a 60 rushing and half touchdown a game floor, points wise. I'm talking his floor is a minimum of 12 points a game.
Wow. See, I have his floor being more like single digits going into the game, more like an 8-9.
Yep.
And most of that's because rushing, because he can't throw the ball with accuracy at all.
Yeah,
My
we'll
number
see.
2 is Jamar Gibbs.
He's my number 3. He's definitely going to get the role there.
He's going to get a lot of touches there. And they're going to use him out of the backfield in the Alvin Kamara way that they did in New Orleans. And I think he's going to be an absolute monster.
I think this year he'll split a lot with David Montgomery.
That's assuming Montgomery's healthy.
He'll be healthy for 8 games.
Yep. Which 8 games it is, we don't know.
My number 4 is Bryce Young.
Okay, my number 3 is Smith and Jigba. Excuse me, C.J. Stroud. My number 4 is Smith and Jigba. But you've got quarterback at number 4 with Bryce Young.
Yeah, I went Bryce Young over C.J. Stroud just because.
C.J. Stroud has more weapons.
What are C.J. Stroud's weapons?
Nico Collins and the two other wide receivers they drafted.
Yeah, Tank Dell and Xavier Hutchinson. Yeah, I'll take.
And then Bob Trees is there.
Oh, okay, Bob Trees.
That's
Okay,
exciting.
Oh yeah, he was so great last year for Tennessee.
I'll take Jonathan Mingo and Adam Thielen, Miles Sanders, and Hayden Hurst over those guys in a just as weak division. The funnier thing about all of this, of course, is the South play the South this year.
Well, that's going to be ugly.
Do not be surprised if one of the first Monday night games is Young versus Stroud.
Oh, it'll be a Thursday night game.
Oh, I think it's a Monday night game because it's the number 1 draft picks, and it's before you know whether they're good or bad. I mean, that's a huge game. Number 1 versus number 2.
For you, but for the normal NFL fan, probably not that big of a deal.
Oh, I think it's a huge game.
That'll
for
be
the
a
NFL
Thursday
fan.
night game. Hope they're gonna release the schedule in what, 2 weeks?
Yes, roughly 2 weeks.
I think they said the 11th.
Okay, who's your number 5? I have Smith and Jigba as my number 4.
My number 5 is C.J. Stroud.
My number 5 is Jordan Addison and or Zay Flowers. I think that if I had to pick one of the two to really break out above the other one, would be Zay Flowers just because of the situation. But Jordan Addison in 2 years, I think, is going to be better than Zay Flowers.
I agree with that. Yes, they're going to change the offense in Baltimore. Todd Monken is in there, and he is going to change what is happening there. But until I see Lamar throw 1,000 yards to a wide receiver, I'm not banking on any of that stuff.
So you see Lamar get past a second read. I'm not banking on that.
Yep.
I mean, it's 1-2 run.
It's exactly what it is. But they now have the wide receivers there with which to be able, when Rashard Bateman is your number 3 wide receiver, that becomes a pretty motley crew.
Yeah, it might not.
It is motley. I'm not impressed.
I meant motley in a good way, not necessarily a bad way.
Yeah. The one I'm going to sneak in there is Kincaid going to Buffalo, playing with Josh Allen. I think he's going to give him some options, especially up the middle. They're going to have, with the double tight now, they're starting to see, I mean, a lot of teams have watched. What did the Chiefs do? The double tight, that big, I mean, it's a copycat league. Let's be honest.
It is.
So, and it also will take some pressure off Allen making that long out throw, hopefully open up some of the stuff over the top. I mean, except when they play Kansas City, because I don't want him to open up over the top then. But
Yeah, I couldn't put him there because Knox has already been there, and Knox is an 8 to 10 touchdown guy.
Yeah, but
Not anymore.
double tight end with Diggs on the outside. They go if they go with a 21,
Mm-hmm.
2 running backs, big fullback, 2 tight ends, Diggs, Allen. That's a pretty tough team to stop.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for this week. Thanks, everybody. And we will see you next week with more probably irrelevant conversation. We'll probably have some more about A-Raj and whether or not he's been attending Knicks games. So we'll see you then.
But he's been going with the off-season workouts.
For now.
Yep.